And I will go ahead and start it just because I mean we're like 30 minutes from start. So I'll go ahead and start the webinar. It's recording and then we'll be good.
Wonderful. To everyone listening, welcome to the recording. Wonderful, wonderful. All right, here we go, noon central. We see folks popping in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to our third wonderful, exciting webinar with the incredible folks at the Mary Kay Ash Foundation. So excited y'all are here. We're going to give everybody about 30 seconds. Hello, Veronica. Welcome. Michelle, hi. Good morning. Good morning. We'd love if y'all want to enter into the chat while we're letting folks trickle in. Where are you visiting us from? The hotline is based here in Austin, Texas. Wonderful. From the West Coast. Welcome. Fargo, Ohio. Julia, I don't know if you had this morning in Dallas, but this morning when I was walking out to my car in Austin, it's going to be about 90 today, but it was like I felt the cool, like hint
Cold.
of fall,
Yes.
maybe.
I would dare say crisp.
Yes. I was like, we're getting there from so many different places: Florida, Kansas, South Dakota, Jocelyn. Hi from Austin, Lubbock, Toronto, Canada. Amazing. Alrighty, well, welcome y'all. We're so excited you're here. We have Julia who's going to give a brief welcome and then we'll dive into our training. But thank you all for joining us today. And I would love to pass to Julia to kick us off.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Welcome. If you're returning for our third session, thank you so much for being here. If this is your first of our 3 sessions, we're so grateful that you're here. And we hope that you take away some really helpful and resourceful knowledge today with our wonderful friends over at National Domestic Violence Hotline. On behalf of the Mary Kay Ash Foundation, we are so honored to be partnering with these national experts in the domestic violence space, and we knew we needed to bring in the real big guns for this. So we brought in our national partners and they have provided these 3 wonderful trainings. You can access them on our Mary Kay Ash Foundation YouTube page if you would like to share, reference back to, keep them in your back pocket. They're great resources to have handy. So those will be hosted on our Mary Kay Ash Foundation YouTube page going forward. So please check them out. And thank you so much for being here. And I'll kick it back to you, Heather.
Wonderful. All right, well, y'all, I'm sharing my screen. Hopefully I did that right. Julia, you'll tell me if you're not looking at the right thing. But are y'all
You're
seeing the
good.
presentation? Okay, I hope so. Wonderful. Well, welcome, welcome. Again, so lovely to be with you all today. So excited to be in our exclusive session with the Mary Kay Ash Foundation ambassadors. And I just want to start off by saying thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You know, I have been familiar with Mary Kay my whole life, and just all that you all do in the community. The hotline was so proud to be able to participate. And thank you, Julia, for the invitation in the MK 5K very recently. But we just heard from the folks there not only how appreciative and grateful we are for our partnership, our shared partnership with Mary Kay and the Mary Kay Ash Foundation, but just for all that you all do in the community to support not only domestic violence awareness and prevention, but also breast cancer research and just all that you do to support causes that impact women. I'm so deeply grateful, and to the ambassadors especially, thank you so much for being here and for all that you do to champion these important causes and uplift women and uplift our communities. So really grateful to be with you here today. So brief introduction. My name is Heather Henry. I'm the Vice President of Development here at the National Domestic Violence Hotline. And I wanted to introduce you to my wonderful colleague, Jake. Jake is behind the scenes, the man behind the curtain who is helping to facilitate our webinar today. But if you have any questions, we are going to make sure to leave time at the end of our session today for some Q&A. But if you have any questions throughout, or you're curious kind of what we're talking about on certain slides or at certain portions of the conversation, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat. And Jake has been an advocate at the hotline. That's how he started his career here. And so absolutely, and now supports our communications efforts, but has a wealth of expertise. So please feel free to drop your questions in the chat throughout. We want this to be engaging and for you to be able to feel like you're having a conversation with us. So thank you again. Like I said, my name's Heather Henry. I'm the Vice President of Development. I've been with the hotline for 2 years. Tomorrow is actually my work anniversary, which is very fun. But prior to being at the hotline, I worked here locally in Austin at our local domestic violence and sexual assault services agency. So I have been in the domestic violence space for the majority of my career, almost a decade. And I'm so proud to not only work at the hotline, but to get to, for the privilege of dedicating my life to this work. I, like many, many people probably on this call, or people who work here at the hotline, have a very close, have had close experiences with domestic violence. I grew up in a home with very severe family violence and witnessed very severe family violence. My father was actually one of the first people ever federally prosecuted for stalking in the state of Texas. And that crime wasn't actually illegal until 1994 when the Violence Against Women Act passed. It wasn't a federal crime stalking wasn't a federal crime. But that same legislation, the Violence Against Women Act, is what created the National Domestic Violence Hotline. So I feel very, very lucky to be able to do this work and to get to support other families like mine, other individuals who, victims and survivors and their loved ones who are needing support. So just wanted to share that little piece about me. I feel very connected to the hotline, and I'm especially so deeply grateful to the folks who champion and support this work. It is critically important, and we're so very deeply grateful. Alrighty, so need to begin with this just little disclaimer. The hotline, we are federally funded, but the views that you're hearing on today's webinar are my own and not necessarily, or the views of the hotline, not necessarily the views of the Children and Families, the Administration for Children and Families, or the Office on Family Violence Prevention and Services. So thank you. Alrighty, so before we dive in, just want to leave this here for you all. Please remember that even though the bulk of our conversation today is really going to be about advocacy and how to be a champion and all of the really hopeful aspects of the work that we do, it can be very heavy. So please, please, please take care of yourself. If ever you're feeling overwhelmed or like you need a moment, especially folks who have lived experience and you're feeling like you need a break or need support, please take care of yourself. Take a walk, stretch, move the Zoom call to your phone if you feel like you need to, walk outside and feel the sun on your face. But also please know the hotline is here 24/7. So if you scan that QR code or visit thehotline.org, you can access support. If you're needing it now or later, or if something comes up for you later, we are absolutely here. So please take care of yourself. Wanted to start with a reminder. So I know we're in number 3 of our webinars here, but just some reminders for folks that maybe this is the first session you're joining. But the hotline, so like I mentioned, we were founded in 1996 after the Violence Against Women Act passed in 1994. And our mission is here to answer the call to support and shift power back to those who are affected by relationship abuse. So our vision and goal is absolutely that we envision a world where everyone experiences healthy relationships and that we can truly put an end to domestic violence. Domestic violence is preventable. Domestic violence is a solvable problem. And it is absolutely our hope that through education and awareness and resources that we can truly see an end to domestic violence in our lifetime. As a reminder, so we operate the National Domestic Violence Hotline, which is a 24/7, 365 resource for anyone in the United States. We also serve all U.S. territories abroad, as well as all military installations globally. So all U.S. military installations globally. The hotline, we receive about 3,000 calls, chats, and texts every single day. And that amounts to about 1 million calls every single year. And so right now in our offices, we have screens that will show exactly how many folks are engaging with the hotline at any given time, and also how many people we've served served since midnight. So right before I hopped on this webinar, I looked. And so just so you all can get a sense of the incredible work that you're supporting through your advocacy and through your ambassadorship, right now, this very minute, on the lines, there are 38 people who are engaged in a call, chat, or text with a hotline advocate. There are 11 people who are in the queue and waiting to speak to an advocate because all of our full-time advocates are occupied on a different call. And since midnight, we have served more than 625 people. So that's that number that by midnight again tonight will be close to 2,500 or 3,000. So just want to put that a little bit into perspective so that you all get a sense of sort of the breadth of the work that the hotline does. In addition to our hotline, where we serve victims and survivors of domestic violence, as well as their loved ones, as well as people who perpetuate harm. We serve people who use harm in their relationships on that line as well. We also have a program called Love is Respect, where we work with young people about educating and supporting them to understand what a healthy relationship looks like. If there are any parents or aunts, uncles, grandparents who are listening in today, I know you can say firsthand how important it is for the young people in our lives to understand what healthy relationships look like. So that is absolutely a huge piece of the work we do, is that education and advocacy as well. So I'm personally really excited to be here today and provide you with as many resources as possible so that you all can embark on your own journey of not only understanding and deepening your understanding of the issue of domestic violence, but also being a champion and advocate in your own, spheres of influence where you can support not only the people in your life, but support us in our mission to create a world where everyone has healthy, fulfilling, and safe relationships. So thank you all. Just wanted to add a piece too, that we honor the strength of all survivors. So the folks that we serve every day on the lines are coming from a very wide range of experiences. Some people are calling because they have experienced a critical incident of domestic violence. They know that they are unsafe and they are seeking immediate shelter and safety and resources and a local program that is near their home that they can go to immediately. Other people are calling and they might start off the conversation by, I don't actually know why I'm calling you, but something told me I needed to call you today. And that might be a really long conversation where they talk about all of the things that they're questioning in their relationship and whether or not it's even abuse, that their partner withholds their finances, or that their partner feels if they're insisting that they track their location on their phone without their consent. And so whether a call is 5 minutes long or 25 minutes long or longer, we take every single call as it comes. We meet every single person where they are in that journey, whether they're a victim, survivor, helper, someone who wants to change their behaviors in their relationship, because every person's journey is different. And it's our goal to meet every single person with that compassionate and non-judgmental support. That's the service that we provide here at the hotline. In our nearly 30-year history, we're celebrating 30 years next year, we are so proud to have been able to be a resource for more than 7.5 million people all across the country. So throughout our history, we have served over 7.5 million people and answered more than 7.5 million calls, chats, and texts. So grateful for the folks that we're able to serve, and we're so grateful to the people who are able to support us in that work as well. Wanted to put this here for you all just to really humanize the work that we do. So I love this quote. The hotline is a symbol of hope. I wrote the number up and pasted it on the wall because I'm like, this is a lifeline. This is where I'm going to turn my life around. I'm going to get safe and I'm going to stay safe. So I have the incredible privilege in my role to get to see these comments come through really frequently, whether that's with a donation that someone is starting online and they leave a comment, or we just receive an email just from the folks that we serve. And we actually got one the other day that I didn't include in the PowerPoint, but I wanted to read aloud to you all from another survivor served by the hotline. I'm not sure I would be alive without the hotline. And I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving. The hotline was always available to help me get clarity on my situation, no matter what time of day or night I needed support. The advocates empowered me to not only get myself safe, but to keep myself safe during those moments where it felt easier to return to my abusive partner. It feels like each conversation with an advocate planted a seed for me, and now I picture myself surrounded by beautiful fruit trees that grew from each of those seeds. And so I hope that you all take that with you in your advocacy journey and understand that if you have one conversation about what a healthy relationship looks like, or you share one of our incredible Mary Kay Ash Foundation tip sheets with one person, or you have, one small conversation with a client in their home about the concerns that they might be having, and you refer them to the hotline, all of those are seeds, right? All of those little small actions have impact and can really truly save and change people's lives. So please remember that in your advocacy journey, just how connected you are to planting those seeds for people. Because with domestic violence prevention and the mission and movement to end domestic violence, it takes time. Relationships are complicated. Untangling abusive relationships is really hard and really complicated. So just remember that it's all about those small actions. So wanted to also kick us off today with a video. So this is a short film that the Hotline created about 5 years ago to celebrate our 25th anniversary. It's called The Call, and it's depicting what an experience of someone who contacts the hotline might be like. The volume's going to be a little low at the beginning, but it'll get louder as I play it. So here we go. The Call. Sorry about that.
Who is that little guy? Got a lovely
situations, we like to find them plants that have visible nodes, because visible nodes are used to be.
Hello, you've reached the National Domestic Violence Hotline.
I need help.
That video truly gets me every time. And I've seen that video probably 50 times, and every time I get choked up at the end. Just grateful that I get to do this work every day, and grateful that you're all here with us in doing it. Wonderful. So in Raising Our Voice, our session today, as we know, is an exclusive session with our incredible Mary Kay Ash Foundation ambassadors. That's really focusing on how you all can use your voices and your networks to uplift and amplify the movement to end domestic violence. So I'm here and I'm so excited to get to brainstorm with you, share some ideas, and talk about all of the many ways, big and small, that you can make an incredible difference in the lives of victims and survivors. So to start off, the bulk of our conversation and session today will be how you can be a champion in the movement, and really understanding how you can lean on your role as an ambassador to help raise awareness, explore the many ways you can take action, whether that's through education or volunteering or your philanthropy efforts. You can walk away with tools and resources on how to talk about the issue and practice speaking about the issue of domestic violence with confidence, as well as how you can utilize storytelling and finding your own why and what brings you to this work, and communicating that to people when these conversations come up. So I think some of the first places that we want to start, oh, and also talking about social media, huge vehicle for advocacy and change is using your social media. So where we want to start is by first talking about some reflections. So for those of us that are able to, I would love if you would be willing to put into the chat what has impacted you. So those of you that were able to attend the first two other webinar sessions with our April Jimenez, our Director of Training, what stuck with you from those first two trainings? Has anything you've heard surprised you or changed how you think about this issue? Did you go home and share something in particular with a loved one in your life? Would love if you could put that information in the chat, and would love to hear from you as you reflect on this experience so far. Give you all a minute to find your keyboards so we can hear from you. Wonderful. I'm getting a couple messages about the breadth and depth of the how many people call us every single day, or how many people call us every year. How the way we present this information is crucial, absolutely, especially with topics that can be really sensitive. Yeah, Holly, we're absolutely able to share those recordings. We have those from those 2-hour-long sessions. The first one was Domestic Violence Awareness 101, and the second was all about trauma-informed communication. So how to talk to people in your lives who maybe disclose that they're experiencing violence or that you might be concerned about. Any other thoughts? Wonderful. Well, if you all think of anything that's impacted you or that you continue to reflect on, please feel free to drop that in the chat at any point during our webinar today. But wanted to start by just talking about a couple of key important pieces that we covered in those first couple of sessions. So you heard again a recap about the domestic violence and our 24/7, 365 services. We also learned in our previous webinar sessions about what domestic violence really is and what it encompasses. So we understand domestic violence to be a pattern of power and control that exists in people's relationships. We understand domestic violence to encompass more than just physical abuse. It includes emotional abuse, financial abuse, spiritual abuse, sexual abuse. All of these different elements really encompass what domestic violence and family violence can really mean. It doesn't just have to be physical abuse. Technology facilitated gender-based violence or technology facilitated abuse is really common. We're seeing that as technology advances, people using that to track or control their partners in really troubling ways. And that's something that we're trying to keep up with here at the hotline and stay really informed about, so that we can, share those resources with folks who reach out to us. Another ambassador shared, I was not aware that dating a potential no person remains a no to a future relationship. Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. So we've also heard about recognizing the warning signs of abuse and understanding that the statistics are that 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men experience severe forms of physical violence in their lifetime. And when you expand that definition to include all those other types of abuse outside of just physical abuse, those statistics drop to more like 1 in 2 women experience domestic violence and 1 in 4 men. So we know that this is a very pervasive and prevalent problem, and we also know that it's preventable and it's something that we can change and seek to change. We also talked about trauma-informed communication and what it looks like to be helpful in a situation where someone is seeking resources. We talked about what it means to not should all over people. That's SHOULD. Let's not should all over someone. We want to approach all of our conversations not with here's what I think you should do or here's what you need to do, rather than here are your options and here are the resources, and understanding that that autonomy and empowerment really belongs to that victim and survivor and how important that is in our communication. We learned about how victims and survivors are the experts in their own lives, and understanding how to support and empower them in their own journey is the most effective way to help someone exit an abusive relationship. And of course, we talked about secondary trauma and how in doing this work, it is so very important to take care and notice when you need to take care of yourself, understand what capacity you have as a helper to really support someone else. You don't have the ability to change their life. You don't have the ability to make choices on their behalf. But understanding where your responsibilities lie and where they don't lie is really helpful in thinking about that self-care and understanding the secondary trauma that can impact people. So we're going to start off by hopefully each and every one of you who are attending today have big dreams for what it means to raise your voice and be advocates and be ambassadors for the work to end domestic violence. But I hope to bring you a little closer and just bring us down, because I think where people get really caught up in their vision to be an advocate for a cause or to be an ambassador is that we imagine that it has to always be really big, huge things. We have to get an interview with the New York Times talking about the work that we're doing to support the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Or we need to find an opportunity to speak to a crowd of hundreds of people and host a huge event that brings out the entire community and brings awareness to this issue. What I want you to walk away with is really an understanding that advocacy begins with small, meaningful steps, and that every conversation you have about domestic violence or healthy relationships matters, even within your own personal circles. You know, we talked about that quote with planting the seeds. Ending relationships that have domestic violence within them takes time. It takes time to enter a relationship, and it takes time to exit a relationship. And so that's one of the many reasons why domestic violence can be a really difficult issue to tackle or to unpack, because it's not simple. It's a very, very complicated issue. So understanding that every little conversation, every little, piece or material, every social media post that you share has the potential to just really grow and embolden someone to understand that what they're experiencing might not be normal. It might help someone to understand that the hotline exists, or that other local resources like the hotline exist in their local communities, local shelters exist, and that they might get one step closer to seeking the services that they need to change their life and change their journey. So all of these small actions build momentum, and over time can create real and meaningful change in your community. So I hope that that's kind of your biggest takeaway that you remember from today. We're not asking you as ambassadors or advocates for the movement to end domestic violence to be on the front page of Time Magazine or the New York Times, but we are just hoping that you will take with you every day the knowledge and resources of what it means to support someone who might be experiencing domestic violence, what it means and looks like to start conversations about healthy relationships, and that you will do that throughout your life it will create ripple effects in your own world and in the community at large, because all of those add up. So when we think about the role of ambassador, what that means to us is that you are someone who is helping to bridge the gap between awareness and action. So for many folks who have potentially come to us today had a minor awareness of the work of the hotline or the movement to end domestic violence, but hopefully you're going to walk away with some tangible action steps that if there's someone else in your life who's coming into awareness about the issue, that you can share with them tangible ways that they can get involved in their community. We hope to move you from someone who's not just an ally and someone who stands with us in this work, but really an advocate and someone who's able to be educated and knowledgeable about what it means to be a connector, whether to the hotline as a resource or to local programs in your own community, how you can get involved in your community. We hope as an ambassador that you're someone who understands what it means to support survivors with dignity and empathy. I think one of the many myths that exist in this work is really that idea of, well, why don't they just leave? If the relationship is abusive and they're not happy or it's not safe in their home, I don't understand why they would stay there. Why would they subject themselves to that? Why don't they just leave? And our hope would be that as an ambassador, that's your opportunity to not, again, not shit all over someone, not shame someone because they don't have the education that you have, but to say and take that opportunity to say, you know what, I understand that question because domestic violence can be a really complicated issue, but there are so many barriers that victims and survivors face in leaving their relationships. Just for as a small example, many victims and survivors, especially if they're a parent, leaving an abusive household might mean choosing to be homeless and living in their car with their children. And they might not want to choose that because then what if CPS comes and gets involved and takes their children out of their care because they don't have a house to live in, but the home that they were living in wasn't safe. So there are so many layers and so many boundaries that maybe a person's the financial situation that they've been isolated, that they don't have access to finances, they have nowhere to go. Who can you call when you have nothing to your name? How can you get out of an abusive situation when your partner has ruined your credit and you won't qualify for a lease on an apartment, even if it's one that you can't afford and you've gotten a job? So this issue is very complicated. And so as an ambassador, our hope would be that in order to uplift this work and uplift victims and survivors and perhaps some of the shame and blame that exists in our world, that you can respond with that dignity and empathy of just survivors are experts in their own lives. And really what people need is resources and options. And people can choose their own journey forward. And honoring that lived experience. So we talk a lot about in our ambassadorship, or even myself as I'm representing the hotline in public spaces, how we can make really thoughtful decisions about our language. And some of the ways that we try to do that at the hotline, and it's very hard, I work on this every single day, but is working to eliminate violent language in our everyday interactions. We hit a goal, we executed that task, I want to trigger that next action. All of these things that can kind of have or violent context to them, we work to really notice and reel back where we can and just be thoughtful about the language that we use in our day-to-day aspects, because we never know what might activate someone who has had experience with firearms, for example, and using the word trigger. Additionally, we really work to use empowering language around not talking about the folks that we serve in a manner of that they're being saved or rescued, but really that they are experts in their own journey and they have that autonomy and that power exists within them. And it's really about reclaiming that power that's been taken away, and understanding how empowerment is such an important piece of survivors' journey. So really being thoughtful about honoring that lived experience and honoring the experiences of the people that we serve, and how the presence of those words and the way we talk about the issue can be really impactful in helping other people understand that it's very complicated and that helping them to go beyond just kind of these surface level assumptions that they might have about the issue. So when we talk about domestic violence, we have some kind of core messages and talking points that we want to recommend that it's important that ambassadors or advocates really stick to. Talking about domestic violence can feel really uncomfortable. I always say when I'm going to an event and everyone kind of standing in a circle talks about what they do for a living, I'm like, y'all, I'm the cocktail party killer. I'm about to, totally take us on a different journey. I always say too, sometimes if I'm not necessarily in the mood to have a really deep conversation, I pretend that I'm a sommelier and that I work in a restaurant and I get to help people pick out their wine. If I'm not feeling like I want to have a whole conversation about domestic violence that day. But so you could always turn it off also as an option. But talking about domestic violence can feel really uncomfortable, and that's very normal. So what our goals are when we talk about the issue publicly is that we really focus on compassion, not perfection. It is imperative that you don't feel hesitant or scared to enter conversations just because you're afraid that you're going to say the wrong thing. It might happen, but that's okay, because in our relationships and in the engagements that we have with other people, not only is repair possible, right? So if you say the wrong thing or you shared a fact that maybe wasn't incorrect and you can correct it later, there's always the option to correct, right? There's always the option to go back and fix and say, hey, you know what? I don't feel like the way that I responded in that moment was necessarily the best, but I did a little more research and here's some more information that I thought might be helpful for you. So focusing on that compassion and not perfection. And then also understanding these really key points in that domestic violence is prevalent but preventable. I know you've heard me say that already today. Prevalent but preventable. This is a solvable problem. We also talk about in the core messages the statistics and understanding that prevalence: 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men. Another statistic that we talk a lot about at the hotline is understanding that 1 in 12 high school students report experiencing domestic violence. I know that that can be really scary, especially to folks who might have young people in their lives. But it is happening. Domestic violence and dating violence is happening among young people, and it's our responsibility as adults and parents and people who care about the young people in our lives to really start these conversations with them early. I want you all to be a child's resource or a young person's resource for understanding what healthy relationships look like. Other key talking points is that resources are available and hope and healing is possible. So that is something that we always want to make sure that we communicate when we're having these conversations, is that there are options. So many people who reach out to us, they reach out because they're feeling stuck, they're feeling alone, they feel like they have nowhere to go and no options exist. And they call us and they make that brave choice to reach out. And once they do, they understand that there are so many different options that they maybe hadn't thought about. After they listen to the expertise of our advocates, they better understand what it might look like to connect with a local shelter or local legal services, or get how easy it might be or difficult it might be to get counseling in their local community, what online resources might exist, how to develop a safety plan that could help them feel safer in their day-to-day lives as they're working to exit that relationship. So resources are available and hope and healing is possible. And the other pieces that we talk about is the fact that everyone deserves healthy and safe relationships. That is an absolute that we stand behind. Every single person on our planet Earth, I believe, deserves to have healthy and safe relationships. That is a given. And so that's what we work towards every single day. And then the other kind of key tenet and talking point is understanding that domestic violence is not a private issue. It has been treated as a private issue very often in our society and in our culture, but public or domestic violence is actually an epidemic that's reaching a public health crisis. And it takes all of us to be involved in understanding how we can be a part of that solution. So those are some of the key talking points that we want to make sure you all have, and also understanding how we can dispel some of those myths that I've been talking about. So one of the major ones, abuse is not just physical. There are so many other types of abuse that people experience: emotional abuse, physical abuse, financial abuse, spiritual abuse, reproductive coercion, all of these things that harm someone's ability to make their own choices or isolate them from resources are all forms of abuse in someone's life. And then also really working to dispel those myths about the ideas that people might have about domestic violence, and that happens in other communities. That's not happening in my community. If any of you had the thought when I said, 1 in 12 high school students report experiencing domestic violence, if your sort of first thought was, well, that's not happening at my kid's school, that's not, I know my kid, that's not happening in my kid's life. It might be worth asking a question, right? It might be worth, when they get home from school today, engaging in a curious conversation, because you might learn that there are people who in our world, what we would typically or historically have described as like, oh, they're just a bad boyfriend, or oh, that's just a toxic relationship. And really we would define those as abusive practices, right? Like if your child is concerned about a friend, or if you're hearing that their partner wants to track their cell phone, like all of these things are things that might be happening in your community. And so I say that not to scare anyone or cause any alarm, but just to say that there are myths that it might be outside of your sphere of influence. And this happens to me even in working at the hotline. You know, in my personal world of my close friends, I recently had an experience where someone who's a very dear friend of mine, I just recently went to their wedding in over the summer, and they reached out to me, and in casual conversation, I learned that his wife that he just married is experiencing some really scary stalking like behaviors from a previous ex-partner. So her ex-boyfriend is engaging in some really problematic and scary behaviors. So all that to say, education is really important. And this is happening in every community across the country. Domestic violence does not have boundaries around wealth or status or race or religion. It's impacting every single community across the country. So those are some of our key kind of talking points about domestic violence. And as you work to understand and get rhythm around these key points, promoting healthy relationships, that's what it's all about, right? That's where we want to lead a lot of these conversations, because prevention starts with those healthy relationships. So understanding how to talk about healthy relationships, it's really also important to understand what the elements of a healthy relationship are, right? So we talk about that to be trust, respect, communication, equality, and boundaries. And a lot of people, it's really interesting to have conversations about boundaries, because a lot of people think that boundaries are something that you can say and impose on someone else's behavior. If if you don't follow this boundary, then, this is a boundary that's on you, on someone else. But really boundaries are internal. Boundaries are an inside job. And what we mean by that is a boundary is something that you place around something that's happening in your life that you can control. And even though it might be based on someone else's action, it's what your behavior will look like if that person violates your boundary, right? So if you have someone in your life that, maybe they constantly hang up the phone when you talk to them if they're upset. If you're having a conversation with them and they're upset and they get mad and they hang up the phone, a boundary would be, hey there, I understand that in those moments you can get really frustrated, but I need to establish a boundary that if you hang up our conversation, I'm not going to pick up the phone when you call me for the next 2 times, just as a way to understand that we're establishing that shared respect. This is really harmful and hurtful in my relationship, and I want to make sure that we have that clear boundary and what you can expect from me if you engage in that behavior. It's not about what they're doing. You're not saying, you're not imposing that they have to behave in a certain way. You're saying what you will do if this behavior comes your way. So I just talked about this, but how it's so important in promoting healthy relationships to start conversations in your world about what healthy relationships look and feel like. And there's lighthearted, fun ways to do this, right? Like if you're talking with a group of girlfriends, or you're talking with a group of your kids' teenage friends, what are you looking for in a relationship? What's the dating scene like among people your age right now? What is that like? I'm just curious. What is that like for you right now? Can be really kind of fun and lighthearted ways to then engage in these deeper conversations and understanding. That's really interesting. I had a similar experience when I was young, and I'm having a little bit of concern about what you're saying related to this topic. And so want to really make sure, do you follow Love is Respect on Instagram? So that's our healthy relationship education program, Love is Respect. So highly recommend that you all like and follow and share both the hotline and Love is Respect. But there's really easy ways that we can recenter and engage and start conversations around healthy relationships, as well as share resources. Wonderful. So next we're going to focus on ways you can take action. So tangible, actionable ways that you can engage in your community. So we're going to talk about what it means to educate and engage, whether that's hosting events, what volunteer opportunities might exist in your world. We're going to talk about fundraising and how fueling the mission is so important, and then also amplifying your voice online and how to support and be a champion in social media. So here on the left, we have what we call an activation kit. So the hotline, we have lots and lots of different materials. You can see we've got tear-off posters, we've got postcards. They're about the National Domestic Violence Hotline. We've got postcards about Love is Respect. We've got bookmarks, we've got stickers, we've got all sorts of materials. So if you are ever interested in getting some of these materials that you could share within your network, we have a request. You can just email us. Jake's going to drop that information in the chat on how you can access those resources. But also Mary Kay and the Mary Kay Ash Foundation have done an incredible job in creating our dual branded materials that are specific to Mary Kay. So those are accessible on the Mary Kay Ash Foundation website, as well as you can always reach out to Julia, I know, and access those resources either via print or digitally if you want to share those Mary Kay resources. But some great ways that you can educate and engage in your community is by hosting or co-hosting awareness events. So maybe you're a part of a faith-based community. Maybe you're a part of a really close-knit yoga circle or book club. Maybe you're a part of your PTA at your children's school. Whatever that might look like, if you think about your kind of spheres of influence, thinking about how you might drip market these opportunities to them. If there's a fall festival coming up or a holiday market or something, maybe you can ask the organizers for your children's holiday market, hey, would it be okay if at the registration booth or at the check-in table, I just put got some postcards from Love is Respect and we just put those out? Or asking your children's teachers, can we put Love is Respect materials in the student locker rooms or bathrooms or whatever that might look like for them. Maybe it's encouraging your spouse or close friends. So October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We have what we call a DVAM, so Domestic Violence Awareness Month is DVAM. We have a DVAM engagement guide. That's like 3 or 4 short tips that it's a PDF document that you could ask your spouse or loved ones to share in their company Slack channel or to distribute in their next team meeting. Also, just FYI, tomorrow is Wear Purple Day. So I hope that you all tomorrow on October 17th will choose to wear purple and comment and share on social media, tag the hotline as we really approach that with Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Another way you can educate and engage, a really simple, actionable way, is starting a conversation. Start a conversation with a young person. Talk to someone about what it's like to be 13 years old and to like a boy or a girl for the first time. Establishing yourself as a person who is a safe, non-judgmental, comfortable resource for a young person is an incredible way that you can engage in domestic violence prevention. It doesn't have to be small. It doesn't have to be groundbreaking. It's just being brave and planting those seeds and leaning into whatever discomfort that might lead you to feel, and just understanding that it's important. It's important that you be seen as a person that a young person could have a really vulnerable conversation with. So yeah, the hotline, we frequently, if you're interested, we host what we call house parties around the country. So volunteers will host these for us, and we're happy if we're able to send a staff member or send materials. And it's a way that we can send kind of a brief little 5-slide about the hotline presentation. And you could do it yourself, or you can engage the hotline if we're available to be there and send a staff member or a volunteer. These are all incredible ways to bring these conversations to your organization locally. I'd love to hear too in the chat if anyone has other ideas about different events or opportunities where you feel like you could engage in awareness. Additionally, volunteering. So we have some opportunities within the hotline, but I know locally there's so many ways that you can engage with your local programs as a direct service volunteer. So here at the hotline, we have launched an initiative called Regional Advisory Councils. We have launched in the Southern region. So if you live in Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Arizona, or New Mexico, we would love if you would join us in our pilot Regional Advisory Council. What these folks are, similar to, I think, probably being a Mary Kay Ash Foundation ambassador, they are ambassadors for the hotline, right? So these folks are trained and equipped to represent us at local events in their community. We send them materials, so they're engaging around Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It's an incredible way to deepen your engagement with the hotline and spread awareness in your local community. Our hotline champions are a group of people who just follow us on social media or follow our newsletter and share and uplift our messages. So sharing domestic violence awareness related content, sharing when there might be a policy action, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, a policy action that we need more activation around. Also, I would encourage you, we have an online directory where you can search and get to know and find what local programs might exist in your community. When I was at the local program, we would have incredible volunteers who would volunteer at our local events or who would volunteer and answer the phones at the front desk of the shelter. So typically those kind of direct service volunteering options require a lot more intensive training, just as if you're going to be engaging directly on site and working directly with victims and survivors, but there are opportunities out there, absolutely. And in fact, I think I saw a couple people in our chat who are in the Kansas area. Well, we're going to be in Kansas City, Missouri, so not Kansas, but Kansas City, Missouri, right across the border. At the end of the month for the hotline, we host the National Conference on Domestic Violence. And we're currently seeking more volunteers to help us be room monitors for the event or take some shifts at registration. So if that's of interest to you or you're local in Kansas City, Missouri, we have volunteer opportunities there as well. So lots of different ways that you can volunteer and engage. Additionally, fundraising, also known as the dreaded F word, but fundraising is really a key critical point that we love to share and let people know is a meaningful way that they can support the hotline. Really, the hotline, our goal absolutely is to be able to expand our capacity to be able to answer every single call immediately so that no one has to wait. And the way we do that is through advocates and champions. So I would say, the way that you would think about your own philanthropy, and I would encourage you to think about that, is if you don't already have an intentional plan for your own philanthropy, make that an action step, make that kind of a commitment that you want to think about and be more thoughtful in how you support your organizations. Maybe as you're coming up to 2026, you want to be really strategic and thoughtful about the causes that you invest in. And I would encourage you to, if you don't already, make a personally significant gift, become a donor to a cause that's important to you, whether that's domestic violence or the hotline or the Mary Kay Ash Foundation, but invite others in your life to be a donor. That can be a really transformational way that people can support. A lot of people support us in fundraising by donating the proceeds of their birthday and hosting a little fundraiser on Facebook and doing a peer-to-peer fundraiser, or hosting a little event in your home and asking that in lieu of gifts or a bottle of wine that people donate to your little fundraiser page because you've dedicated your birthday to the hotline. Whatever that looks like for you, there is a lot of opportunity, and the power of recurring gifts, those add up. I know I like to give monthly in my personal philanthropy. Those are the ways that I give. So I have my 4 or 5 organizations that I do monthly gifts to, and it can add up. You see those tally up. It's like your Netflix subscription. All of a sudden you're like, how did I get here? I have 17 monthly gifts. We got to reel this back a little bit, but those really do add up. And I'll tell you, from an organization standpoint, we have about 350 people who choose to give to the hotline every single month. And some of those gifts are small, some of them are large, but we are then able to count on that revenue, right? We're able to, as we're projecting and as we're planning, we're able to say, hey, we know this core group of our monthly donors that they're going to bring in and give, sometimes it's over $200,000 a year in total when you add all of them up. So it really does make an incredible difference. I would also say it's so important to start with your why. So I shared a little bit about my personal story at the top of this webinar, and it's taken me a while to get to the place where I feel more comfortable kind of talking about that with public audiences, but I think it's so important. And so I would just say I would reflect on, or part of your homework maybe is to reflect on what your why might be. And it doesn't have to be a deeply personal story by any means, but maybe it's that you know someone who has been impacted by domestic violence and you think about them a lot, you think about them often. Or maybe it's that you're a parent and you feel so strongly that you want your child, and you know your child deserves to have a beautiful, healthy, incredible, long lasting, marriage or relationship or whatever that might look like for them, and you just want that for your child or the people in your life. That's an incredible why. I would say our recommendations for understanding what your why is as you talk about this issue is keep it short, keep it authentic, keep it hopeful. I would also say if you are someone who has a personal lived experience with domestic violence, it takes practice to understand what pieces of your story might feel okay in divulging and what pieces you might need to keep close and that those belong to you. And it's not something that you feel comfortable or need to share externally. So I would just practice that and be thoughtful about that and take lots and lots of care of yourself in that journey. And practice your 1 minute ambassador statement. We all practice and know what an elevator pitch is, but I think that that can be helpful in understanding as you have these conversations. Hey, I'm a Mary Kay Ash Foundation ambassador, and one of the pieces that's really important to us as ambassadors and at the foundation is our commitment to domestic violence awareness and prevention. And so I recently went through a training where we learned all about the National Domestic Violence Hotline. And I would love to tell you just a little bit about their services and their work, and how you can get engaged in your community, right? Like practicing that in front of the mirror, practicing that as you're driving to your next appointment, is really important. But really having your personal why, understanding and communicating that can really connect you to the person that you're speaking with. Using your voice online. So I don't know if anybody can recognize this fabulous person who we have featured on the screen here. Her name is Shandi McCrae, and she was recently featured in the Netflix docuseries America's Sweethearts. So Shandi is a former Dallas Cowboys cheerleader, and I have loved watching not only the original Dallas Cowboys cheerleader. I don't know if y'all remember, it was on CMT with Kelly Finglass and Julie, y'all are Dallas. So Mary Kay, I hope you've seen this. But so big fan of the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders and their journey, but now on Netflix. But Shandi very, very bravely and very vulnerably shared her experience with domestic violence and dating abuse in the recent season 2 of America's Sweethearts. And we are so grateful to Shandi because she also, in doing that, reached out to the hotline and wanted to use her platform and use the influence that she has to educate more people about accessing help and, just really work to support the hotline through that journey. So grateful to Shandi. And if you're interested, next week on October 22nd, we are hosting a webinar with Shandi as well as former Miss Kansas, Alexis Smith, who are both incredible survivor leaders who have shared their stories publicly and in the public sphere. And so we're going to hear from them about what that experience was like. But I'm sure Jake can drop the registration link in the chat if you're interested in joining us on the 22nd. We would love to see you. But yeah, so amplifying your voice, obviously Shandi, when she shared her story, she did so very publicly, very vulnerably. That is one option of many in sharing your story or using online spaces like social media to amplify your impact. So other ways that people share your impact is just by sharing resources. If you're not already, follow the hotline or follow Mary Kay Cares on social media and add to your story, uplift things that we're putting out for Domestic Violence Awareness Month or for Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month in February. And I would say with that, it's important to share your why and important to balance that authenticity, but also I would be thoughtful about your boundaries, right? Like where are you comfortable with, like what we were talking about what things you want to keep close and what things you want to share externally can be helpful. And also, like I said, tomorrow's Wear Purple Day. So please don't forget, feel free to tag us NDVH official on most channels. We're pretty easy to find, but I hope to see lots of people engaging in Wear Purple Day tomorrow. I wish it was today. All right, we've got a couple more slides, but I want to be sure to leave plenty of time. We have till 1:15 for questions, so I'm going to run through some of these. But I hope you all also check out our toolkits. We have lots of resources online. So this link right here will link you to one of our social media guidance and recommendations pages on our website. So you can download images like the one you're seeing on the left that you could share to your LinkedIn, share to your social media story. We have captions that you can copy and paste into your post. You don't have to do any thinking. We have done all the thinking for you. So all of these toolkits are designed to really be ready to use content like graphics and hashtags that make it easy for you to share information in an effective and impactful way. So would love if you're able to promote the 24/7 confidential support that's available through the hotline, but also would love to encourage you to engage your network and tag people in your post and say, hey, will you share this with your workplace? Hey, Janet, I know you're a business owner. Will you, at your next company, all staff, would you let me come and speak for 5 minutes, or can I send you some materials to talk about how important it is for employers to be educating their staff on healthy relationships and how to access the hotline if they need? So there's lots and lots of tools on our website. I highly encourage you to check those out. In addition to keeping the resources, or like I said, our co-branded Mary Kay Ash Foundation and the hotline resources readily available, because you never know when these conversations might come up. Another big piece that you can support and be an advocate in your community. And I will start off by saying that domestic violence is absolutely a nonpartisan issue. I think it's probably the last remaining nonpartisan issue, but domestic violence impacts people of all political affiliations, right? Like there is no discrimination in whether someone's political affiliation leads to them experiencing or knowing someone who's experienced domestic violence. So the hotline is absolutely a nonpartisan organization, and we are very heavily federally funded. And so with that, we are actively engaged in the appropriations process and what's going on in Washington. So another way that you can be an incredible advocate is to use your voice, call your senators. I think that there's probably boundaries around in what capacities you can do that and say, that I'm a Mary Kay ambassador. I think Mary Kay likely has guidance around what their preference might be. But I would encourage you to call just as an individual, as a parent, as someone who cares about this issue, reaching out to your local representatives, calling upon Congress to be really engaged in these issues. Because a lot of the pieces that we will send policy action alerts out about are issues that either impact the hotline directly and impact the funding that we receive from the federal government, or they impact wanting to ensure that people in our community are lifting their voices around issues related to topics or funding items that might impact victims and survivors, right? It might make it harder or easier for someone who's experiencing domestic violence to access resources. So like right now, a couple examples with the government shutdown that we're actively in, it was community advocacy and people calling their senators and talking to them in previous administrations and in past years with the hotline of previous government shutdowns. It was our community reaching out to their legislators and saying the hotline is a critical emergency service. Despite it being a government shutdown, the hotline's funding needs to remain. And because of that community advocacy, because people reached out on our behalf, we are now deemed an emergency service. So even though there is a government shutdown, the hotline remains open because we know that this is a critically important resource that people need 24/7, 365. Other issues like SNAP and Medicaid, those resources are critically important for people who might be facing financial abuse and are seeking to leave an abusive relationship and totally rebuild their lives without any access to money or support in their, that they don't have access to that financial support. So they might rely on programs like SNAP or Medicaid for themselves or their children. So those are the types of policy alerts that we'll send out or advocate for when we do work with our policy team in Washington. So I encourage you to stay educated and stay up to date on those issues. And so I want to fly right through kind of these last few slides so we can leave plenty of time for the Q&A. But it's really important in your work as an advocate and your work as an ambassador that you prioritize self-care, right? Like I said, it can get exhausting. It can be emotionally burdensome to be an ambassador for change. And so really want to make that a priority for yourself. We talk a lot about in our wellness and well-being trainings that it's really important that you draw circles around certain things, you draw boundaries around certain things. And so maybe in your ambassadorship, in your conversations, you learn, that piece that I divulged about my own personal story was too much. And it took way too many days to kind of emotionally recover and feel like I was back at a baseline. So I'm going to draw a circle around not sharing that part of my why externally and not going there. Or maybe if you engage that you went really, really deep into a conversation with someone who is experiencing domestic violence, and you realize you probably should have reeled back and stopped at a place that was a little further backwards and referred them to the hotline, because you're not an advocate and you're not an expert. And it's really important that we draw circles around where our expertise begins and ends. Also really important to remember you're not alone in this work, even as an ambassador or as a helper in the community. Please reach out to the hotline. Our advocates are available 24/7 if you're needing support with that situation where my friend let me know that they were experiencing this kind of some scary behaviors from a former partner. I reached out to the hotline. I'm surrounded by advocates all the time, but it happened at a dinner and I wasn't expecting it. And then I was chatting and texting the hotline that evening, chatting with an advocate to just say like, hey, did I do this right? Like, was this helpful? What I provided? Is there anything else I should have said? So that can be an incredibly helpful resource. I just want to leave you with some reminders on how we can best support the victims and survivors in our lives as we are engaging in our own advocacy and being an ambassador. There are things that helpers can do that can make such an incredible difference, but it's really important to understand what you can't do. You cannot make the abuse stop for someone. You cannot make the pain go away, and you cannot make the victim decide if they've had enough. All of those are are outside of your control as a helper. They're outside of your control as an ambassador. And it's really important to understand, like I said, where the pieces that you have control over begin and end, because that can help you in your advocacy and ambassador journey, and understanding where you can really be most helpful. With that said, there is so much that you can do. So I think that it's important to remember that even though you cannot control someone's decisions or make someone's decisions for them, you can let them know that you're concerned. You can be a non-judgmental ear. You can empower and build them up and say, I want so much for you, and I believe that you deserve a healthy relationship, and I want to see that happen. How can I be most helpful to you? You can suggest someone contact the hotline. You can refer them to resources, and you can say things like, hey, you know what? I recently went through this training, and a lot of what you're talking about in your relationship is just raising a couple of alarm bells for me. And so if you want to, I just wanted you to know that this is an option, that you can contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline, and they have advocates and experts who might be able to answer your questions a little better than I can. Would you like that resource? Would it be helpful? I have a trifold brochure right here with more information I'm happy to share with you or leave behind. And then how to start a conversation. So I think this is can be some of the hardest places, but again, there's lighthearted ways to do it. Or if there's ways that you might be really concerned about someone in your life, it's just being honest and transparent in that, hey, what I'm hearing is just raising a little bit of concern for me. And so I want to talk, if you're okay with it, I want to talk about that a little more. I have some questions. But I think the most important thing, in addition to understanding, I said the number one thing at this webinar that I wanted you to take away is that advocacy is all about small, meaningful actions. The number two thing that I want you to take away is understanding that if someone discloses to you, discloses what they're experiencing, discloses that they're in an abusive relationship, the best thing that you can say in responding to them is not, oh, okay, well, here's how we're going to fix this. Here's how we're going to tackle this. I think that's our knee-jerk reactions as helpful people who care a lot. But really, if someone discloses that they're in an abusive situation to you, the best thing that you can say is, I'm so sorry that that's happening to you, and thank you for trusting me with this information. That's all you have to say. I am so sorry that this is happening to you, and thank you for trusting me with this information. How can I be helpful? What would you like to see happen? You could talk about what it might look like for them to contact the hotline. You can ask them if there are certain ways that you can be most supportive in their journey. And you can direct them to lots and lots of different resources. So yeah, just want to leave us with a reminder that you are a part of a powerful movement, the movement to end domestic violence. We're so glad that you are here with us. We hope that you will move forward in your journey. And now that you have these tools about talking points and how to express your why and how to maintain those boundaries in those conversations, how to refer someone to the hotline, I hope that you will take away and plant those seeds, whether it's in your own life or maybe you'll follow our action center, maybe you'll follow us on social media and promote various campaigns that the hotline has coming up later this fall. But just remember that those small conversations can lead to really big change. You never know when a conversation or when a piece of information might be that life-changing piece of information that someone needed. So please keep showing up, keep speaking up. Please know that and trust that your voice is really, truly making a difference. You are not screaming into the void. It does make a difference when you plant those seeds and you engage in advocacy and empower your community. So also please, if you're able, feel free to take a screenshot. The hotline is, like I said, a 24/7, 365. Hope and resources are available. Our incredibly highly trained expert advocates are there to support you, whether you have questions or you want to refer someone to contact the hotline. We never close, and we're happy, happy, happy to be there for you or someone else who might need it. Please take care of yourself. I hope that you've heard when we say that this is such an important piece of your journey, is taking care of yourself and finding those times for self-care, processing, maybe journaling if you had a particularly difficult conversation that's lingering with you. Understanding how you can best take care of yourself is self-care is a beautiful and challenging journey. But please, I hope you prioritize your well-being as an ambassador. And yes, here's our information, but would love to hear, please feel free to pop in the chat if you have any questions at all. We have just a few minutes left. And also feel free to drop in a question, or if you'd like to, I'm also happy to, I would love to hear, if for those of us who are still with us, what's one commitment that you're gonna make, that you're gonna take away from this training today? What's one thing you're gonna take with you? What's one thing you want to try? What's one thing you want to experiment with in your role as an ambassador? I would love to know that also here as we wrap up our webinar. Wonderful. All right. Yes, thank you, Monica. We're going to put resources in the schools. Feel free to reach out if you want more. They're also available online. Lisa is going to further educate and watch the first 2 series. Love that. Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Chartrice. We want you to follow the Policy Action Center. I'm going to wear purple for Wear Purple Day and post about it on social media. You're going to ask your church to display some of our resources. Love that. Introduce yourself as an advocate. Hi there, I'm Dee. I am an advocate for domestic violence. I'm proud to be an advocate for domestic violence. Share awareness resources. Love that. Be aware of what is happening. Be aware of what is happening around you. Wonderful. Well, thank you all so very much for being with us here today. So with that, I love hearing all of your commitments, and here's some easy ones that we always share at the end of our webinar. We're so grateful to be a Mary Kay partner and to get to partner and get to know each and every one of you who are champions of this work as well. I would really encourage you. I love all the commitments that you made in the chat, but please, I would challenge you, tell someone what you learned about today. Tell one person. And if you haven't already, follow the hotline on social media, get involved and share information throughout the year, and use our resources, spread those dual branded Mary Kay Ash Foundation resources in your network, in your community, volunteer, host a drive, or make a plan for your philanthropy. How can you and your family make a meaningful impact is a question that I would encourage each and every one of you to ask yourselves. So wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you all so much. We're right at the end. So grateful to get to be with you all today. Thanks for everything you do.